Viewers, Israel is bombarding Gaza and evacuating a sizable town near the Lebanese border, and the latest sign of a potential ground invasion of Gaza that could trigger regional turmoil. Israel's defense minister has ordered troops to prepare to see Gaza from the inside, hinting at a ground offensive aimed at crushing Hamas. Times Zone's reporting from the borders of Gaza, where possibly in the next few days there could be hectic action as Israel prepares for a three-pronged offensive.
Right now, we are a few hundred meters away from Gaza. This is the fence that is dividing Israel and Gaza. And this was the fence that was breached on October 7. Let me show you. This is the place from where these terrorists came into this site. They breached the fence. They came over to this place. And after that, they resorted to barbarism and brutality. First time on Indian TV channel, you will be seeing the place from where the terrorists had entered into this site. See how they had destroyed the fence. They breached the fence and they came over to this place. They were in vehicles. They were on motorbikes. They were carrying with them large quantities of arms and ammunition. Everywhere you will only find here in this area that's close to the border fence. It's only about devastation. It's only about destruction. Look at this. This was the drawing room. This was the lobby. But today, you'll find completely torched because of the rocket attack and because of the mayhem caused by these Hamas terrorists. Nobody was spared because they were trying to target whosoever came their way. They were not sparing anyone. Right now you can see that black smoke billowing out. This was the place where these Hamas terrorists had been hiding. Because for the last several days we have seen that the Israeli troops, either with the help of the air raid or they are pounding shells to target all those places where the Hamas terrorists are hiding. You can see the smoke billowing out. It seems that Hamas terrorists were hiding there. That's why they have targeted that particular area. On the basis of intelligence and the coordinates, whatever they are getting, they are trying to target all those terror dens. There seems to be a terror den there in the Gaza area from where the Hamas terrorists had been launching rockets, trying to target people on this side of the border on Israel, because they have fired more than 40,000 rockets since October 7, and continuously they are targeting civilian areas. And now it is a punitive offensive that has been launched by Israel since October 7. They have killed more than 11 top commanders. Rattled Hamas people are now firing more and more rockets in this area. They're trying to target more and more civilians in this area. So they are trying to inflict maximum casualty. Today, one of their top commanders who was believed to be looking after their naval operation was also eliminated. And before that, they killed Bilal Kedra, who is considered to be the man responsible for Kibbutz massacre. They also killed Ali Qadi. Ali Qadi is the same person who in 2005 was arrested for killing Israeli businessman. In 2011, he was released on under exchange program. And see, once a terrorist, always a terrorist. He continued with the terror-related activity. And finally, he was the one who had been the mastermind of this massacre. He had been mastermind of the butchery, barbarism that Hamas terrorists on that particular day resorted to. And you can see right now, again, I see that smoke now spreading all over the sky, the black smoke, because short while back, one shell was pounded there. And they are pounding shells with their guns. They are trying to target those areas because already Israel has made it clear that they are not going to spare anyone. Whosoever will be coming their way will be targeted and will be eliminated, and Hamas will be wiped out. Pradeep Datta with Sachin Rawat for Times Now.
And even as the world looks very closely at the situation as far as Israel and Gaza is concerned, with troop mobilization along the border with Gaza, there have been strikes, of course, on a hospital where tragically over 500 lives have been lost. There's been a blame game as well on that episode. And Israel also has tried to crack down on Hezbollah posts in Lebanon, that is in the northern part of Israel. What really are we looking at? To talk about all of that, we have with us Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, the former National Security Advisor to the former Vice President of the United States. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this evening. And let me begin by asking you, first and foremost, as far as Israel is concerned, you've been an expert in this field. How do you see the situation on ground evolving? Israel said that its forces will soon be entering Gazan territory and view things firsthand. Are you looking at a further intensification of the conflict, and are we looking at a high number of human casualties potentially?
Yeah, Madhav, thank you for having me. Look, there are a lot of questions there and a lot of answers. I think this operation, this Israeli operation into Gaza, will kick off probably within the next 48 hours. And the mission they've got is to reduce Hamas infrastructure and leadership positions inside Gaza City. They put out a lot of leaflets on the ground to get civilians out of the way because I don't think they want to have a lot of collateral damage. But remember, those attacks from Hamas came out of Gaza into Israel. It was a pretty horrific attack, and I think they have to go in and reduce the Hamas infrastructure and the leadership there as well. At the same time, they do have to look to the north, because in the northern part of Israel, you've got Hezbollah. Hezbollah is Iranian-supported. Probably when you look at Hezbollah and Hamas, Hezbollah is the stronger of the two. It's a better military-type organization, but both of them are supported by Iran. So the real actor in this, the one that everybody needs to pay attention to, is Iran. And that is the reason why the United States pre-positioned forces in the Eastern Mediterranean. They have put two carrier strike groups, the Ford Strike Group and the Eisenhower Strike Group, as well as what's called an amphibious ready group, which is an assortment of ships that brings about 2,500 U.S. Marines. And they also brought the command and control ship, the USS Mount Whitney, to control operations out of the Persian Gulf into the region.
Right.
So I think the Israelis have to look two different directions at the same time. And hopefully our presence, and what I'm hoping is happening, is that we as the United States are telling Iran, don't let Hezbollah get involved, because once you get involved, we're going to get involved. Remember, 32 Americans have been killed in this strike, and over a dozen are missing. So we're into this action, whether people like it or not. So we're going to have to see where it develops as it goes forward.
Right. You're, of course, hoping that this is some kind of a deterrent value, and that's certainly what your presence, you hope, will achieve. But as you rightly mentioned, the 29 American casualties as far as this terror attack is concerned, and over a dozen U.S. citizens who are still missing. In that light, do you think the government is working to extract the hostages safely, and what protocol does the U.S. government and military follow in such a situation?
Yeah, Madhav, you know, it's really a tough situation. Those hostages are they could be anywhere in Gaza, but they're probably in subterranean tunnels, and they're probably not in the same location. There are multiple locations, and trying to find them is going to be very, very hard. What you cannot do, and this is really unfortunate to talk this way, but it's true. You can't predicate your military operation on trying to get those hostages out. You have to almost make an assumption. It's a terrible assumption, and I acknowledge that those hostages are already gone, because Hamas will probably either execute them or move them to other locations, hold them on for another period of time for some type of bartering. So you can't think like that. And trying to find them is really, really hard to do so. I know we've got our expert teams on the ground. I mean, U.S. Special Operations Command is on the ground. The Israelis are very good at it. But this is one of those, honestly, it's really almost too hard to look on getting them out. I think you almost have to say, as hard as it sounds to say, you have to write them off and conduct your military operation.
There's also news coming out earlier today that the USS Carney actually intercepted 3 land attack cruise missiles earlier, which were potentially fired by Houthi forces in Yemen. So already there's a very significant role that's being played by the US warships that are there in that region. And, you know, this is very, very significant, because are we looking at a potential escalation there at some level being, handled with that particular shooting down? How do you look at it?
Madhav, it's a great question, because I think you are looking at potential escalation. That is one of the reasons why I think it's very important that the message goes out quite clearly to the state sponsor of all of this, who happens to be Iran, that knock it off. Can try to contain the operation, because if Iran's involved, and we're already seeing Iranian proxy forces inside Iraq also attacking U.S. bases, if we see that happening, the escalation may start. And then the trouble with an escalation, when you go up what we call the escalation ladder, you don't know where to stop. And you have to make that decision, and it's a hard decision. We have got on board those aircraft carrier strike groups on the guided missile cruisers and destroyers, over 600 Tomahawk land attack missiles. They can reach Tehran. Each one of them travels over 1,500 miles. They've got a 1,000-pound warhead on board each missile. And we could tell them, don't get involved because we'll come out and touch you. Again, and I'll repeat it, already over 32 Americans have been killed. So we're into this game, and we need to tell people, do not escalate or there'll be more problems. So that's where we're at today. I think in the next week or so, it's going to get more and more perilous. We need to be aware of it, and we need to have very, very firm guidance from the President of the United States and from his advisors on what the next steps are.
Right.
It's a very dangerous situation.
Absolutely. And President Biden actually said that what Israel has endured is equal to 15 9/11s. Do you agree with that assessment?
Oh, sure. When you look at the sheer numbers, I mean, when people say, well, they've lost 1,500 Israelis, in your mind, you may not think, okay, 1,500, it's a lot, but when you look at the demographics compared to the United States of America, that would be the equivalent of us losing over 20,000 U.S. citizens. So it is rather significant. And it's just not the people they've lost, it's also the soldiers they've lost. And the fact is they've also lost, Americans have been killed, Brits have been killed, French have been killed, Thai have been killed. So it's an international problem. Here's what I would make a very clear statement on. In 1945, we came into World War II with some pretty good moral certitude, some pretty good moral clarity. And we said quite clearly at that time, we were never going to see something like what we saw happen in World War II with the Nazis and what they did with the Jews in Germany. You're kind of seeing the same thing today. And I think that's the moral certitude and the moral clarity. And you have to ask the entire world, are you willing to accept this? Because we should not, as a nation, or anybody should accept this on the way the heinous crimes that were committed. These were civilians, unarmed civilians, at a music festival or at their homes. And we shouldn't accept that as a people, and no nation should.
Absolutely. Nobody can justify attacks on innocent civilians, as you rightly put it. But the reason I'm asking you this question is in the context of what you said about moral certitude, because there are some like German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who also incidentally visited Tel Aviv a few days before President Biden. He warned against foreign intervention in the ongoing Israel-Hamas war or clash, however one chooses to call it. How do you view that kind of a statement coming in from Germany?
Honestly, I think the reason he's made that comment was sort of like I was saying, everybody stay out. Let the Israelis work, fight this fight with Hamas. And Iran, you stay out of it. Hezbollah up in Lebanon, you stay out of it. Everybody kind of back off from that. Because what they're trying to do, and I think Scholz is trying to do that, the Chancellor of Germany, is de-escalate the situation. Because you made a comment earlier, the potential of this thing escalating is there. And if it escalates, it may escalate very hard because and the comment I made earlier, it's a term we use on the escalation ladder, is once you start going up that ladder, you better know when you're going to get off it. Because if you don't know where it's going to end. And that's a concern I think everybody should have, is what is the end state on this? And that's where all these foreign leaders, and I think Macron is going in from France, is going in as well. Everybody back off. And we're going to see where it goes. And I think we'll know this week.
Right. And the United States has also vetoed the UNSC resolution moved by Brazil, which called for a ceasefire, stating that it failed to underscore Israel's right to self-defense. There are many countries who are backing that particular resolution. How do you view this decision, considering the potential civilian casualties that, A, continue to occur and potentially could happen as a result of any further ground assault?
Well, let's be very clear. Hamas came out of Gaza. They killed civilians. And that's what generated this action. And I think there should be no ceasefire. No ceasefire until Hamas, the leadership, and Hamas as an organization is eradicated. Remember, in the charter, the written charter of Hamas is very clear. They want to destroy the state of Israel and kill all Jews. It's clear. It's in their charter. So everybody needs to understand this is the way they are, and there should be no ceasefire until the Israelis finish the job with Hamas. They tried to do this in 2014. Remember, that was the last time Israel went in force in Gaza to try to take care of the situation with Hamas. They came out after a month. There was no good solution, and they still get those rocket fires coming into Israel. 70% of Israel is under the range of rockets that come out of Gaza that they consistently shoot. And remember, Israel came out of Gaza in 2005. They actually withdrew and actually tore down settlements to make sure this was up to Gaza to figure out. So you need to tell the Palestinians, not only Hamas, with the Palestinian authorities, with Hamas, you've got a problem, and it's your job to solve it. And if you can solve it, then we'll work together. But until you work together, solve that problem of terrorist nation inside Gaza, they're not going to talk. And they shouldn't. No nation should.
Right. So in recent days, we've seen U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken jet-setting across the Middle East, going to various countries. The question that's on many people's minds is what's the role that U.S. is going to play in pacifying and controlling this conflict? Because there are Arab countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia. These are two countries who are successfully on the way to a fruitful diplomatic relationship with Israel, but have reconsidered their position as the conflict has progressed, especially after the hospital attack in Gaza. Now, one would have thought that they would be the torchbearers in the current conflict resolution, but that doesn't seem to be happening, at least at the moment.
Yeah, it's a great point, because really I think the Israelis were heading very close. In fact, I think Mohammed bin Salman, even MBS, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, even said they were pretty close to some type of negotiation, some type of normalization of relations. We tried to do that at the end of the Trump administration. We frankly ran out of time to do it. But that would have been important. And I think Iran is very concerned about that, because if you have normalized relations, not only with the Saudis, but also with the Egyptians as well, I think it's a huge plus for them.
Also, sir, when asked what next if Israel manages to decapitate Hamas in an interview with Fox News, you've said that it's a mistake to think so far ahead. What do you think is the most immediate prerogative of Israel and what it should have in mind? Because the statements coming out of Israel is that they want a permanent solution.
Yeah, here's what I said. I mean, very, very clear. I said that shouldn't be our worry, because the question was, there were some senior people said, well, before the Israelis go in, they need to determine what does it look like after Hamas. I said, that's not our job. That's not the Israelis' job. Their job is to finish off Hamas. And you've got leadership out there. That's why you've got a boss. That's why you've got the Palestinian authorities. The United States has given over $200 million a year. And they need to step up and say, this is what we intend to do. That's their problem, not ours. We shouldn't have to worry about it. They should worry about it. The Israelis' job should be finish off a terrorist organization like Hamas, and then let people worry about that afterwards. But I think people make it too hard. They sound like, for lack of a better term, bureaucrats and diplomats. Oh, well, you rub your hands. What should we do? What should we do? It's very clear what to do. It's a terrorist organization. It's designed to kill Jews. It's designed to run them out of Israel. Finish that job, but support Israel to do it, because they've killed over 30 Americans. We're into this game. Let them finish the job, and we'll support them. We'll be basically holding their coat. So I would tell everybody, look, they started this, and it should be up to Israel to finish it. Be very, very hard about it, but compartmentalize. What I mean by that is very focused effort on what their job should be to do. Don't overthink it. And that's what some people are actually trying to do, which is overthink it. What comes next? What happens next? Don't worry about that.
Right. You've also said that it's a mistake to try and make it work with Palestinian authorities, and that trying to involve them economically and trying to build a relationship with Iran as well has only meant essentially feeding Hamas-like terrorism. So what other solution do you think there is, if not to resolve this diplomatically?
Economically. That's what is going to drive this to a successful conclusion. Look, you go back the last 10, 20, 30 years, it hasn't worked. We always thought in the Trump administration that how you break the back of the Middle East on friction is economics. And we did that with the Abraham Accords. We said, if we make life better for you, and you have a better life because of economics, then you start to settle everything down. You don't keep going into warfare. That's one of the beauties of President Trump when he talked about what we tried to do internationally. Our first thought was always, it's an economics-based plan. That's what the Abraham Accords are. It's getting everybody to work in a natural manner through economics. And once you get economics and make people's lives better, it's easier to feed each other and have a better life than it is to shoot at each other. And that's what they're trying to do. Right now, the Palestinian authorities don't want to do that. Hamas doesn't want to do that. They see economic advantage by the Israelis or anybody else trying to improve life is a threat to their existence. And they're right, because people should have and want a better life. And once we transmit that, once the West or the Israelis or we transmit that to the Palestinians, we think it can change the dialogue.
Right. General Kellogg, you've also said that there will be some other elements ready to take their place as soon as Hamas is dealt with. Is this a failed dig at Iran? How do you view claims of alleged involvement of Iran in the Hamas attack on Israel?
Well, Iran's involved. I think there is. Look, that's the reason why the Palestinian Authority is there. I mean, otherwise, why are we giving them money? Why does Abbas even have a role? Because there is another alternative. That's for the Palestinian authorities to take charge. And Hamas and Hezbollah are terrorist organizations supported by a terrorist state, Iran. Remember, in their parliament, Iran, when this attack occurred, they chanted death to Israel and they chanted death to America. They are not our friends. And they support and they fund and they train and they equip both Hezbollah and Hamas, even which is unusual because now we're talking, they're supporting both the Shia and a Sunni Muslim movement, which is kind of surprising that they're actually doing it with both. But they are because they're causing instability. And we need to remind everybody about that. I think our mistake in the United States was that we tried to normalize relations with Iran. You cannot normalize relations with a terrorist state. Doesn't work, and we shouldn't be doing it.
Right. You even posted on the platform X that shouldn't be Israel's concern what follows after eliminating Hamas. We didn't worry about what followed ISIS, al-Baghdadi when we eliminated them. Don't overthink the issue, something that you've just said. The moral imperative is, of course, killing Hamas. Now, how does one manage that while also avoiding collateral damage in the form of Gazan lives?
Well, on collateral damage, that's the reason why we've told the Israelis, have told civilians to get out of there. You cannot eliminate collateral damage. In a built-up area, it's going to happen. And anybody who thinks otherwise is really quite foolish when it comes to military operation. That's the unfortunate piece about it. That's the reason why the Israelis told them, leave town, get out of the way, go towards Rafah, go to the south, because you're going to have some type of collateral damage. But here's what I remind everybody. This attack was started by Hamas when they came out of Gaza into Israel and killed civilians. They're the ones who started with the collateral damage. They're the ones who killed civilians. And now there's a price to be paid. And there's some real moral clarity to it. And they should respond to that. So my point is that's the reason why you don't want to have to fight wars. You know, one of our Civil War generals from the South, Robert E. Lee, once said that he is glad that war is so terrible because otherwise we'd become so fond of it. And he's right. You know, that's the reason why those of us who've been in uniform understand how tough it is to fight a fight in a war and the damage that we see. You never want to have to get into a fight. And sometimes we have to remind our civilian masters, if you get into this fight, this is what's going to look like, but you're the ones who brought us into it.
Right. General Kellogg, I also want to get your thoughts on the row between India and Canada. Last month, New Delhi asked Ottawa to reduce its diplomatic presence in India after Prime Minister Trudeau cited what he said was, quote-unquote, credible evidence of a potential link between Indian intelligence and the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was shot outside a Sikh temple in British Columbia in June. How do you view this diplomatic row? Because till now, there's been no evidence to back up the claims of Canada.
Yeah, I would say that's an issue for you and the Canadians to solve. That is not something for me to even talk about because I'm not that aware of it, meaning I'm not witting to the Canadian or the Indian position on that or what's happening. So this is one of those I'd say, as we say in America, over to you. You guys have to figure that one out.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, because, you know, this has been a big issue here domestically. I thought this is something that you could also weigh in on, but I'd like to thank you for joining us, Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, and sharing with us your perspective on this.
Hey, thank you for having me. Good to be with you.
The News Hour at 10 will be right back after the break.